So here we are, and I'm going to talk to you today about um, two strategies, two methods of organization that you can use for a comparison and contrast essay, right? Because you know that you've got these two or more topics that you're planning to discuss their similarities, their differences, and why that's important. But how are you going to approach that discussion? The first method that we're going to talk about is probably the more streamlined of the two methods, and that is the chunking method of organization. It does go by different names, depending on which textbook you're using. Some call it chunking, some call it subject by subject. I'm sticking with chunking just because that was the label that was used for this method of organization in the textbook that I used for a long time, and it just kind of stuck, and that's what we'll go with for the sake of convenience. But let's talk about what the chunking method is, first of all. So I'm going to move on to the next slide. As I explained before, having a little bit of issue with not being able to go into slideshow here, little technical difficulties. But with the chunking method, we're going to start with at least two topics that have a strong basis of comparison. If you need to review basis of comparison, go back to that video. But once we've established that we have a valid basis of comparison, how are we going to approach that discussion? So the thing is, with this method, we're going to start with our two topics that we're going to compare, and we're going to give them a label. We're going to call them subject A and subject B. In this case, I decided for this example that maybe we would compare two American cities, New York and Los Angeles. All right. So where we have to start, again, is with that basis of comparison. What would make a comparison to, let's say, New York and Los Angeles valid? Well, let's start here. Both are American coastal cities. One is East Coast, one is West Coast. All right, so our two biggest cities, think about it, that we have in this country are established on both of our coasts. They are the United States' two largest cities, first and second, respectively. So that's a justification for the comparison. Both are home to a thriving arts and entertainment industry. You know, we think of Broadway. When we think of theater, we think of New York. When we think of the movie industry, we think of Hollywood. I know that's shifting and changing in recent years, but by and large, Hollywood is still the city that we equate with the movie industry. Both of these are tourist cities that attract millions of visitors, and both have a large immigrant population, which we may or may not get into that particular discussion point for reasons that I'll go into a little bit later. But let's take subject A, New York. So if you're going to do a chunking structure for your comparison contrast essay, one of the first things you have to establish is what is going to be the order that you're going to discuss these subjects. So whichever one that you're going to discuss first, we'll call that subject A. All right, so the idea is you're going to work from subject A to subject B. For now, we're going to stick with our subject A, New York. This is where you've got to make some decisions. All right, what are going to be your discussion points for subject A? Let's say for this particular essay, I'm deciding I want to talk about the weather. What is it like in New York? Maybe we want to talk about the people. Let's say this is geared towards a person who might be traveling, right? So maybe it's the unaware traveler. Maybe it's the person from Hicksville somewhere who's never been to New York. What are they going to expect when they get there? So we might talk a little bit about what the people are like. My experience, at least, was that people in New York, especially if you've been raised in the South, and down here we speak to everybody and we wave and we call each other honey. And when you get to New York, everybody's in a hurry, everybody's brisk, everybody cuts you off. They're just not as friendly and open as we are in the South. So apologies to anyone from New York. I don't mean to offend you, but that was just my experience as an Alabama girl when I was in New York for the first time. We might talk about how people get around in New York, right? We know that not a lot of people drive. People take public transportation. People walk, right? What's the entertainment like? New York is very artsy. We know that that's the home of Broadway, right? It's really known for the contributions it's made to the field of theater. All right, so that's subject A. So now we want to think about our subject B, Los Angeles. So note here, what I've done is I've gone through the same discussion points in the same order. And this will help you when you think about how to structure your essay and you want to use the chunking method. Think about how you want to stagger your points, right? Because every point that you've made about subject A, you want to make those same discussion points about subject B, and preferably, this is not necessarily a have to thing, but preferably you should do them in the same order. That will help you keep track. It'll help your reader keep track. All right, so again, we're going to go through a discussion of weather in Los Angeles. What are the people like? What is the transportation situation like? Obviously, there's a contrast there because in LA, everybody tends to drive their own cars. So that's why the freeways are so congested in Los Angeles. And then again, what are those crucial differences when we look at entertainment and arts? And one big difference is that Hollywood is much more crass. It's much more money driven. As a whole, they're not really as concerned about the quality of art and entertainment. I think that's more of an aesthetic when you think about theater and Broadway, right? But the movie industry is all about the bottom dollar. There's only, I've heard it said, there's only one time of year when Hollywood really cares about art and quality, and that's Oscar time. Other than that, it's all about making the most money. But anyway, that's a point of contrast that you could make there. All right, so this video has taken you through how to break down subject A and subject B. In the next part of this video, I'm going to talk to you about structuring your introduction and how to transition between subject A and subject B for this type of essay. All right, so see you in the next video.